Have you ever wondered why, as women age, they sometimes start to feel resentment towards their husbands? What could be the real reason behind this shift in their emotions? It's something many don't talk about, but it's actually more common than you might think. In today's video, we're going to uncover a very practical and life-changing reason for this, one that sheds light on the emotional dynamics of aging couples. Through real-life stories from elderly couples who have been through it all, we'll explore how aging, changing roles, and shifting expectations can create tension in a relationship. Stick around, because this video might just change the way you think about aging and relationship. Story 1. A lifetime of changing expectations. Let me tell you about Mrs. Thompson, a vibrant woman in her 70s. When we spoke, she shared a story that many older women can relate to. In her younger years, Mrs. Thompson was the epitome of a devoted wife. She was always eager to take care of her husband, Jim, cooking his favorite meals, managing the household, and making sure he never had to lift a finger. She found joy in looking after him, and in many ways it made her feel valued and appreciated. However, as time passed, things began to change. Mrs. Thompson explained that as the years went by, her role in the relationship slowly started to evolve. "I did everything for Jim for so long," she said, "but now I feel like it's time for him to step up a little more." What she realized, as she grew older, was that her needs in the relationship had shifted. The expectations she once had, of being the caretaker, the organizer, the one who kept everything running, no longer felt right. She wanted something different. She wanted to share the responsibilities, to be partners, not just in love, but in life. This is something many women experience as they age. At first, it might feel natural for a wife to take on these traditional roles, especially when they're younger. The husband is often seen as the provider or protector, and the wife is the caregiver. But as the years go by, and especially as the woman's energy levels, health, or priorities change, those old dynamics no longer fit. Women begin to realize that they deserve more equality in their relationships, more shared responsibilities, more partnership, and more mutual support. For Mrs. Thompson, this shift wasn't just a preference, it became a necessity. She had given so much of herself for so long, and now, as she faced the challenges of aging, she couldn't continue to do it all by herself. She wanted Jim to help more, to understand that the dynamic had to change if they were going to continue to grow together in a healthy, supportive way. But without those changes being acknowledged, resentment started to build. The key takeaway here is that as women age, they often desire more equality and shared responsibilities in their relationships. When these needs aren't met, even in a marriage where love still exists, frustration and resentment can emerge. Mrs. Thompson's story highlights how important it is for both partners to recognize and respect the evolving needs of each other, especially as they navigate the later years of life together. Story 2. Physical and emotional change in the relationship. Let me introduce you to Mr. and Mrs. Lewis, a couple in their 80s, who have been together for over 6 decades. Mrs. Lewis shared with me a perspective that many older couples can understand. In their younger years, she was deeply physically attracted to her husband, John. She often admired his strength and vitality, feeling a deep sense of security in his presence. "He was my rock," she told me, her eyes glistening with nostalgia. "I felt safe, loved, and admired him more than anything." However, as they both entered their 70s and 80s, Mrs. Lewis began to notice significant changes. John's once strong, muscular frame had softened, and the man she had once looked up to seemed to be slowing down. Mrs. Lewis confessed that she found it hard to connect with him in the same way physically. The attraction she once felt began to fade, and that change was more than just about looks. it started to affect their emotional connection as well. "Physically, he's not the same person," she said, her voice tinged with a sense of sadness. "But it wasn't just that. I felt like he was becoming more distant emotionally too. And I didn't know how to reconnect with him in a way that felt meaningful." This emotional distance, she explained, had become more noticeable over time. As their bodies changed, so did their relationship, and they found themselves struggling to maintain that deep emotional bond they once had. The truth is, the physical changes that come with aging can lead to a real shift in the emotional dynamics of a relationship. Many women, like Mrs. Lewis, may find it hard to stay connected with their husbands when they begin to see them as less physically capable. It's not just about losing physical attraction, it's about feeling a sense of loss and disconnection in a relationship that was once marked by strength and security. As the years pass, many women may feel neglected emotionally as they watch their husbands grow quieter or less engaged, and this can lead to feelings of isolation and frustration. The key takeaway here is that as both partners age, emotional intimacy becomes even more crucial. When the physical aspects of attraction fade, it's the emotional bond that holds the relationship together. If that emotional closeness is neglected or lost, resentment and loneliness can easily take root, leaving both partners feeling disconnected from one another. Story 3. Generational divide in household responsibilities. Now let me tell you about Grandma Evelyn, a woman in her late 70s who has spent a lifetime taking care of her home and family. Evelyn's story is one that many older women can relate to, as she's seen her fair share of changes over the years. For decades, Evelyn handled everything, from cooking and cleaning to managing the household finances. Her husband, Charlie, now in his 80s, never really stepped in to help with the chores. "It's always been my job," she explained, "and I was happy to do it. But now, I'm tired. I don't know how to make him understand that I can't do it all anymore." What frustrates Evelyn even more is that now that they're both older and have more time on their hands, there's no real reason for the inequality. Charlie doesn't have a full-time job anymore, and neither of them has the same physical demands that they once did. Yet, Evelyn still finds herself doing all the work, and it's starting to take a toll on her health. "I feel like I'm being taken for granted," she said, shaking her head. "I want to enjoy these years with him, but instead, I feel like I'm still doing everything on my own." This story highlights something that happens to many women as they age. The burden of household responsibilities often falls squarely on their shoulders, even as both partners grow older. For Evelyn, this wasn't just about cleaning or cooking. It was about feeling respected and valued. She expressed that it's not that Charlie doesn't love her, but the lack of effort on his part made her feel invisible, like her contributions didn't matter as much anymore. And that emotional strain can quickly lead to resentment, especially when she feels like she's being unfairly burdened, despite the fact that they now both have the time and energy to share the work. The key takeaway here is that it's not about a lack of love. It's about practical issues. As women age, they begin to resent the unequal distribution of responsibilities, especially when their health and energy aren't what they used to be. It's not about the love that's shared, but the effort that's put in to maintain the relationship and keep the household running smoothly. When both partners aren't pulling their weight, it's easy for frustration to build up. Story 4. Emotional labor and the unspoken burden. Let me tell you about Dorothy, a lively woman in her late 60s who's spent her life nurturing both her family and her relationships. Dorothy has always been the heart of her family, the one everyone turns to when there's a decision to be made, when there's a family issue to resolve, or even when it's time to plan the next get-together. I love my husband, but I realized over the years that I've been carrying the weight of everything, Dorothy told me. I'm the one who keeps track of everyone's birthdays, who makes sure the family stays connected, who decides where we go for holidays and even how we all get along. She paused, a quiet frustration evident in her voice. And I do all of this while he just goes along with it, never realizing the emotional weight it carries. As Dorothy and her husband have aged, she's become more aware of the emotional labor that's always been on her shoulders. It's not just about physical chores, it's the mental and emotional effort of managing the family dynamic, maintaining relationships, and keeping everyone happy. I feel like I'm always the one holding everything together, she said. I love him, but I'm exhausted from carrying all this alone. It's hard when it feels like no one notices what I'm doing or appreciates the effort I put into making everything work. This story is a reality for many women as they age. Over time, they often take on the emotional labor of managing family relationships, planning events, and making decisions for everyone. As Dorothy points out, this often goes unnoticed by their husbands. The weight of this responsibility, which is often invisible to the outside world, can leave a woman feeling unappreciated and overwhelmed. And when her partner doesn't recognize or share in this burden, resentment can begin to build, especially when the emotional labor continues into their later years. The key takeaway here is that women often carry an unspoken emotional burden, especially as they grow older. The constant management of relationships, decisions, and social obligations can wear them down. If this emotional labor isn't acknowledged or shared, it can lead to feelings of frustration, exhaustion, and ultimately resentment. It's not about a lack of love, it's about the recognition of the emotional effort that women often make to keep everything running smoothly. Story 5. A shift in personal identity and autonomy. Now, let's look at Clara and John, a couple in their 80s who have weathered many seasons of life together. Clara spent much of her younger years devoted to raising their children and supporting John in every way she could. I was happy to put myself last, she shared with me, because John's career and the family came first. I didn't mind at all. That's just what I did. But as Clara has gotten older, she's come to realize that she's no longer content with simply being the caretaker or the support system. Now, I find myself needing time for myself, she explained. Time to pursue my hobbies, to read, to take long walks, to just enjoy life on my own terms. However, this shift has caused some tension in her relationship with John. For years, he was used to Clara being the one who always prioritized him, the family, and the household. Now, when she expresses a desire for more autonomy or time alone, he struggles to understand. It's hard for him, Clara admitted. He doesn't see why I need to spend so much time by myself. He thinks I'm pulling away from him, and that really hurts. Clara's need for independence, which she's only now discovering in her later years, feels like a rejection to John, and this has created some emotional distance between them. This story sheds light on an important aspect of aging. As women grow older, they often develop a stronger sense of personal identity and autonomy. The roles they once played in the family, often revolving around supporting and nurturing others, begin to shift. Clara, for instance, has reached a point where she craves independence and time for herself, things she may have sacrificed for many years. But if her husband doesn't adjust to this new phase in her life, it can cause frustration and lead to resentment, as it did for Clara and John. The key takeaway here is that supporting each other's independence is crucial as both partners age. When one partner begins to seek more personal time and space, it's essential that the other understands and respects that need. Aging brings with it changes in identity and priorities, and recognizing these shifts can help both partners maintain a positive, fulfilling relationship in their later years. Conclusion. As we've seen through the stories of these remarkable couples, the dynamics in a relationship can shift as both partners age. Whether it's changing expectations, the emotional burden, or a newfound need for independence, these shifts are natural parts of life. What's most important is recognizing and understanding these changes and finding ways to support each other in this new phase of life. Thank you for joining us today and listening to these stories. If you found any of this relatable or insightful, please leave a comment below. Let us know if you agree with the points made or if you have your own thoughts to share. You can comment and if you found this video helpful, or 0 if you feel like there's more to explore. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, take care and remember to support each other as we grow older. Goodbye, and stay tuned for more.